right, I'm really excited to have everyone here. All right.
Before you start, let me.
Good one, you open, Sarah. Oh.
No, we want to keep it. Okay.
We going? All right.
Got you.
So first of all, I want to thank a few people. I want to thank my dad, and he helped me a lot, helped me with the calendar band, which is the hardest part of this thing. And I want to thank Eric Tone for sponsoring me in this space. This is the first event in the Oddfellows Seven Stars Gallery. And he's also helped me, we put a video together on MONAD. He's come to all my talks. He introduced me to my programmer, Thomas Spellman, who's here. And Thomas and I have worked on the MONAD app, and now we're working on the Earth Clock app, which I'm going to talk about next month. And I guess I was going to thank Jim Rodney, he's not here. And my housemates, Nancy and Robert, and they've been very helpful, a lot of things. And Menlo McFarland, he helped me practice and go over the script a lot. So, all right. So, let me see. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel mostly disconnected from the earth and everything on it. I rarely touch the living earth. I mean, I'm walking around on plastic rubber shoes, on concrete and synthetic carpet. And I am an electromagnetic being, but I'm no longer grounded. And that leads to mental problems like depression and anxiety, and pretty much any physical problem you can imagine. Now, one of the more insidious ways that we are all disconnected from the living earth is by our modern method of telling the time and date. Before the Industrial Revolution, 95% of all people worked directly with the land, and they paid a lot of attention to the agricultural rhythms of the living earth. They told the time of day with the sundial as they had in their garden. They carefully followed the phases of the moon, and the constellations in the night sky served as their calendar. They paid attention to when certain flowers bloomed, when birds and insects migrated. There are so many ecological biorhythms that can serve as calendar markers for those who understand what they're looking for. Now, ancient people believed that not just the earth. All right, Glenn. So ancient people believed that not just the earth, but the entire universe was alive. And the basic units of time, the solar day, the lunar month, and the seasonal year, were all thought of as planetary biorhythms. Ancient people believed that the earth was the center of a living body in the same way that the heart is the center of that the earth was the center of a living universe in the same way that the heart is the center of a living body. Now, in contrast, the modern clock and calendar are completely disconnected from these planetary biorhythms. A mechanical clock or watch tells artificial time. It's mechanically regular and mathematically precise, like this watch. The problem is, if you use a mechanical clock or calendar to structure your day, you end up feeling more like a robot than a living being in resonant harmony with the biorhythms of the living earth and solar system. Now, in our modern society, it's not easy to get reconnected to the living earth and solar system. One obvious thing you can do is work in a garden, walk around barefoot, dig your hands in the soil. Another thing you can do is to get reacquainted with the natural rhythms of time. And paradoxically, modern technology can help you do this. So, on my phone is the MONAD app. And, where is it? So I needed a longer cord here.
All right.
So here's the MONAD app right here. And you can download this from the App Store right now if you have an iPhone. And MONAD is a prototype. And what it does is it generates a virtual three-dimensional model of the solar system featuring planet Earth at the center of a specially modified time and date-telling celestial sphere. So I'm going to show you how to work this. You can see the gestures that I'm using to operate the app. These dots on the screen, the blue dots, tap, drag. Let me switch this over. This is the southern hemisphere. And back to the northern hemisphere here. Now, so, and also a pinch and reverse pinch. Now, MONAD features if you notice here, you're looking at the Earth from an unusual perspective. This is the axial perspective. Ordinarily, you look at the Earth with the axis up and down like this. But in this case, you're looking straight at the axis. And this is the North Pole right here. And this is the hour hand, right there. Now, MONAD automatically places a time zone spanning hour hand at your location on the globe. So I'm located here in Northern California, so that's where my hour hand is located. But if I was in New York, the hour hand would emerge from right over there. Now, at the base of the hour hand, if you look closely here, there's this little green sphere. And my body on Earth is located at the exact center of that little green sphere. Now, you tell the local time based on what number the hour hand points at. So, right now it's a little bit after 1900 hours, which is 7 p.m. here in Northern California where the hour hand is located. Noon is always at the top, midnight is always at the bottom of this 24-hour number dial. And the reason you don't see 12 and 24 is because of a daylight savings. And Thomas really enjoys daylight savings. You can ask him about all that. So time advances forward like this, with the Earth rotating in an eastward direction. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit right here. Now here's the location and phase of the moon, showing the lunar month. The moon advances about 12 degrees per day, which is about 1 degree every 2 hours. Now, of course, everyone knows that the moon is orbiting the Earth, and the Earth is orbiting the sun. And you can actually see that clearly in the helio mode, which is sun-centered. So, speed it up once again here. Here you can see the orbital pathways of Mercury and Venus. Here's Earth, of course. It carries the celestial ring with it. And Mars is hiding somewhere in the side of the celestial sphere there. You'll see it come out right there. And the outer planets, here's Jupiter and Saturn. Their orbital pathways are moved inward and placed on this, it's a little racetrack-like object called the representative planetary dial. Now, this sun-centered perspective is how modern science understands the solar system. But the Earth-centered perspective is equally valuable and important. And MONAD actually integrates the sun-centered and the Earth-centered perspectives. And let me show you how that works. Here you go. Let's zoom in on this a little bit. I'm going to speed it up. And hit the geo button, and it switches back to geo mode, back to helio, back and forth. You can go here. I really enjoy doing this, but probably y'all are less thrilled about this.
Oh,
But Yeah, it is amazing actually, right? I mean, if you think about it. And really what it is, all that I'm doing here is I'm switching perspectives on the same underlying activity, the solar system. It's just a different perspective. The difference is when you're in geo mode, the Sun-Earth axis is maintained with a vertical orientation, with the sun fixed at noon at the top of this 24-hour number dial. And the whole thing functions as a planetary calendar clock. So, now when you're inside, or when you're on the Earth, let me slow this down a little. It's really cruising along here. So when you're on the Earth, from inside the celestial sphere, the sun appears to move on the ecliptic, this tilted red circle. Can you all see that there?
Yeah.
So we just passed, now where the circle of the ecliptic crosses the celestial equator, which also has the number dial, are two extremely important equinoctial nodes. And right here, right at that moment, that's the descending equinoctial node. This is the winter solstice position there. And I'm going to slow it down and try to set it right at the ascending equinoctial node. Right about there. Oops. Oh, I stopped this. All right. So when the sun is at either one of these two nodes, there's one of them, the ascending node. The descending node is 180 degrees opposite right there. When the sun is at either of those positions, you have equal amounts of night and day everywhere on the globe. So you zoom inside here and you can see what it's like here. See that it's right through the axis, the spin axis. Okay, now who can tell me what a constellation is?
Pattern of stars that we see from the Earth.
Right, it's a grouping of stars. And here you can see, if you look here closely, you can see here's Capricorn, and this is Aquarius, and here's Pisces and Aries. Now, ancient astronomers gave the constellations of the zodiac names to indicate their relation to the seasons, the 4 seasons. And 2,000 years ago, the constellation of the zodiac that the sun entered every year at the time of the spring equinox was Aries. And they named it Aries because at that time of year, the sun breaks up the frozen earth like a ram attacking with its horns. But in modern times, the sun enters the constellation of Aries about a month after the spring equinox. If you look right here, you can see here's Aries, and there's Pisces. Well, Aries, that constellation, used to be where the constellation of Pisces is now. What happened is called a precession of the equinoxes, where the constellations, they move away from the nodes, advancing along the ecliptic at a rate of about 1 degree every 71.6 years or something like that, which is about 14 degrees every 1,000 years. And it's like a gyroscope, that precession, gyroscopic precession. So because of axial precession, the 12 constellations of the zodiac are no longer in alignment with the seasonal events that their names refer to. And this is why we now have invented the signs of the zodiac. Now, you can see the signs of the zodiac on the outside of the celestial ring. Here's Pisces, and this is Aries right here. Now, the signs of the zodiac have the same names as the constellations, but the signs don't precess. So, if you look inside here, let me go back. So, the signs are defined as 30-degree segments of the ecliptic, this tilted red circle here, measured from the nodes. And this sign of Aries is always this first segment after the spring equinoctial node. So even 10,000 years from now, the constellations will have precessed 140 degrees. So here's where Aries is now. It will have moved along the ecliptic down to about there. But the sign of Aries will always be right here, right next to this spring equinoctial node. Now, paying attention to the phases of the moon and the progression of the sun along the ecliptic is useful. It can help you get reconnected to the living Earth and solar system and these natural rhythms that are going on here. But you still need a regular calendar to tell you which days to go to work. So MONAD has, it features a parallel display of a Gregorian calendar. And let me show you how this works. This red indicator arrow passing through the sun points at the Sibyl date on this Gregorian calendar band. And this calendar band, it has 12 month blocks, January through December, and it's got 365.24219 day blocks, which is the average number of days in a seasonal year. Now, if you zoom in here to tell the date, here it is, the sun is at the spring equinox. What's the date, right? So it turns out that it's March. Each dot represents 5 days of the month, so there's 4 dots in this day block. So this is March the 20th, and it's the day before the weekend. The weekends are the 2 dark day blocks. So it's Friday, March 20th. And you can see that it's verified down here on this digital display. Let's look at one more date. Let's look at today's date. So hit the Now button, and that takes you to the current configuration of the solar system. And the sun is in Gemini, and you zoom in here, and you can see the date indicator is pointing at the second day of the month of June, and it's 2 days before the weekend, so it's Thursday, June 2, 2022. So, as you can see, MONAD has a lot of unique and useful features, but most important of all is what it reveals about you and your relation to the Earth and the solar system. Now, once again, take a look at how the sun is fixed at noon at the top of this dial, and how the sun and Earth always maintain a vertical orientation, like the head and the heart. Now, this configuration of Earth at the center of this celestial ring is, in fact, the heart, a scientific model of the heart chakra. I know it sounds kind of crazy, right? But
Yes, it does.
thank you. So I'm gonna.
But appealing.
But appealing, right? So yeah, good. Thanks. So let me shut this off here. And the heart chakra. Now, do you guys know what a chakra is? The word chakra is from the ancient Sanskrit. It means wheel. And maybe you've seen pictures of the chakra system, consisting of 7 or more energetic wheel-like structures stacked vertically in the body, right? Now, I should have left this on because, I mean, you must have noted the wheel-like structure of MONAD, right? The Earth at the center of this wheel, this celestial ring. And I'm convinced that MONAD is the foundation of a scientific theory of chakras, where each chakra is ruled by a planet that sympathetically manifests. The planet has a magnetosphere, which is a magnetic emanation from the interior of the planet. It has a magnetosphere which sympathetically manifests an organ system in the body reflecting the nature and characteristics of the ruling planet of the chakra. So, all right. I got stuck. Oh yeah. So, take a look at this poster. Now, a scientific theory of chakras makes possible a scientific theory of astrology. And I know this is crazy stuff. I don't even believe this stuff myself until recently, right? But now, a scientist, the first thing he wants to know, he hears about the word astrology, he wants to know is, what is the mechanism of influence? How can a planet millions of miles away have an impact on my body? And a scientist knows that it can't be due to gravitational or electromagnetic force, which decreases rapidly with distance squared. But what about electromagnetic information? Now, think of it like a garage door opener, right? You point the opener at the garage door, push the button, garage door goes up or down, right? Now, the garage door opener is not transmitting the force required to open the door. It's transmitting an informational code which triggers a local motor, which then opens the door. Think of a planet as a giant garage door opener, right? Emanating a magnetosphere filled with morphogenetic or form-generating information, which triggers a response from a corresponding organ system in the body. And each planet has a corresponding area. So traditionally, each chakra is associated with an endocrine organ. But the endocrine system requires the circulatory system to deliver endocrine hormones. So the two should be thought of as one system, the endocrine circulatory system of chakras, including the heart, spleen, and kidneys as additional chakra centers. Now, this poster only shows the heart chakra as a scientific chakra, but each of these planets could be placed at the center of its own celestial ring, forming a scientific chakra which measures planetary biorhythms or planetary rhythms, which correspond to endocrine biorhythms from the corresponding organ, correspond to endocrine biorhythms and the rhythmic release of endocrine hormones from that chakra, basically. All right, now, as an example of how this works, I want to consider in more detail the heart chakra and how the form and function of the earth is complementary to the form and function of the heart, lungs, and digestive system. But before you can understand the heart chakra, it helps to understand that the heart is not just a pump, pumping blood through the body. Blood flows through the circulatory system for the same reason that rivers flow on Earth, because it is part of a complex physiological system spanning all four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. By the way, the sun, of course, is the crown chakra, generating a cycle of motion similar to a motor. Oh yeah. Now, note the fourfold organization of the heart chakra, and how the space surrounding the earth can be divided into 4 quadrants, equivalent to the 4 chambers of a heart. Now, first of all, I got to remind you that most people, they think of the earth here as a chakra, they think of the earth as with the axis going up and down here. But that's not the way it is with MONAD. The axis is from left to right here, so it's side to side. So you've got 2 obvious divisions to consider here at right angles to each other. One is the Earth's equatorial plane, which is right down the center. And so right here is, this is the Earth's equatorial plane. You've got the north hemisphere of Earth over here and the south hemisphere of Earth over here. And then the other division to consider is the circle of illumination, which separates the light half from the dark half of Earth. Now, the Earth's equatorial plane is invisible, but the hydrosphere and atmosphere surrounding the Earth is radically different based upon the 2 sides of the north and south hemispheres. They're 2 seasons out of phase, right? When it's winter in the north hemisphere, it's summer in the south. Winter turns to spring, summer turns to fall. Always 2 seasons out of phase at the 2 ends of the earth. Now, in a human body, the equivalent separation is found in the blood, equivalent to the seasons. The arterial blood, which passes through the left side of the heart, is alkaline and loaded with oxygen, whereas the venous blood, which passes through the right side of the heart, is acidic and loaded with carbon dioxide. Now, as far as the Earth's circle of illumination goes, note how the sun heats water on the surface of the Earth. The water turns to vapor, it rises up into the atmosphere, like the blood is ejected from the heart up into the lungs. Then, as the Earth slowly spins relative to the sun, it carries that water vapor to the opposite dark side of the planet, where it's cooler, allowing that water vapor to condense and fall as rain. So this planetary hydrologic cycle is equivalent to the circulatory system in animals, and the circle of illumination is equivalent to the diaphragm, with the lungs above and the digestive system below. Now, all living organisms have biorhythms. Animal biorhythms include the heartbeat and the breath, and various endocrine organs rhythmically releasing their endocrine hormones to regulate the blood flow and the distribution of oxygen throughout the body. Oxygen is vital to animals in the same way that sunlight is vital to plants. Now, individual plants don't have a heart or a lungs or an endocrine system, but they do have collective biorhythms. And plant biorhythms include those planetary or astronomical rhythms that involve the distribution of light from the sun and reflected off of the moon to photosynthetic plants growing on the surface of Earth. Now, MONAD, once again we're going back to MONAD here, can easily demonstrate these 3 main photosynthetic biorhythms. Which include the solar day, which is the time it takes for the Earth to make a complete rotation relative to the sun, and the lunar month, which is the time it takes for the moon to orbit the Earth, going through its phases relative to the sun. There's a half moon there. Dark moon, of course, is right here. Full moon would be right here. And a seasonal year is the time it takes for the sun, for the Earth to orbit the sun, or for the sun to apparently circle the ecliptic, which can also be seen by it moves back and forth north and south on this date indicator, which is linked rhythmically to the tilting of the Earth's circle of illumination above and below the Earth's spin axis. Right? These three planetary biorhythms involve the distribution of light to variably to the surface of the Earth, and it changes the amount of daylight that you get at different times of year. You can see that on this twilight dial here. Here's the time of sunrise and sunset. So you've got a lot of sun time here in the summer, and a lot less in the fall. So that has an impact on these plants. Those are their biorhythms. All right. So now plants are rooted in the earth, but they are electrically charged by the sun. And the tidal rhythms of the moon and the phases of the moon have a tremendous impact on the photosynthetic plants. Clearly, the living earth cannot be thought of in isolation. They have this idea of Gaia, for instance, as this, that the earth itself is a living organism. But it's not an organism, it's an organ system in the solar system, and the whole thing is alive. The whole thing, this life here requires this, and actually all of this to be alive. It's a photosynthetic living solar system. And the Earth is what I call the heart planet. And it grows a predominantly plant-based biosphere. Now, what I mean by that is, I got one more poster here. Now, if you had a huge scale, and you were to weigh all of the living organisms making up the biosphere, you would find that plants and the soil microorganisms that facilitate plant growth make up well over 99% of the biomass of the biosphere organisms. Plants are the biological tissue of the living solar system, and they're what make complementary animal life possible. And here's animal life right here. Animals make up less than 1/2 of the biomass of the biosphere. And I've enlarged this square right here. This is it up here. And 8 billion of us humans is right here. We're about 2.5% of the animal biomass. Such a tiny fraction of the whole. If you look at that, just this little right thing right there, that's us. And yet, our human industrial society is threatening the health of the entire biosphere. All right. So we're getting close to the end here. One last let me make sure. So before I finish up here, I want to talk a little bit more about the biology of the system here, and talk about the complementary physiology of plants and animals. Now, while the animal heart beats, right, the heart planet of this living photosynthetic solar system spins once per day relative to the sun, creating a rotary pulse of light-powered photosynthesis, which, like a motor, has two phases, light and dark. Now, this illustration shows two trees growing out of the earth, right? Symbolically representing the two phases of photosynthesis, the light phase and the dark phase. Now, this top tree represents the lungs, which is the light phase of photosynthesis, which is solar powered, and occurs when the light from the sun activates chlorophyll in plants, which drives a chemical reaction which charges cellular batteries called ATP, and produces oxygen as a waste product, which gets released into the atmosphere. And if we didn't have any plants on planet Earth, there would be hardly any oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Now, this bottom tree is equivalent to the digestive system and represents the dark phase of photosynthesis, which can be performed in the absence of light. Now, individual plants don't have a digestive system, but they do eat by filtering carbon dioxide molecules out of the atmosphere, like a blue whale filters plankton out of the ocean. And plants grow by using their solar-powered cellular batteries, ATP, to assemble those carbon dioxide molecules that they extract from the atmosphere. They assemble them into glucose, which can be further linked together to form starch and cellulose, which is what plants are made of. Now, animals perform a complementary chemical process known as cellular respiration, which has equivalent light and dark phases. Now, the light phase of cellular respiration occurs when animals inhale the oxygen generated by plants into their lungs, into the blood flowing through the lungs, passes back through the heart, out to the cells making up the rest of the body. The dark phase of cellular respiration occurs when that oxygen-rich blood is delivered to user cells throughout the body. It ends up in mitochondria, which perform the Krebs cycle, which use the high-energy oxygen bond obtained from the plants to break down the sugar obtained from plants into carbon dioxide and water, and in the process, charge cellular batteries, the exact same ATP molecule used by plants. Now, those charged cellular batteries power all of the cellular activities that allow animal bodies to grow and be active. The carbon dioxide molecules are a waste product. They get exhaled back into the atmosphere, where they once again become available for plants to eat and grow more plant material. Together, plants and animals perform a perpetuum mobile of life. Okay, in conclusion. All right. Life takes radically different forms at different scales. This cosmic scale plant being, you see its chakra system here, is your outside half. Half of you is a human animal. And the other complementary half of you is this photosynthetic solar system. Plant and animal. You can't have one without the other. We share the same DNA, a parallel evolution and development. As above, so below, but in a complementary fashion. Our bodies are made in the image of the solar system. We have a modular organization, just like the solar system, and that organization manifests as the endocrine circulatory system of chakras. You're not separate from the solar system. You belong to this solar system. And you've got two hearts. The one in your chest and the one you walk around on, planet Earth. That's it.
All right.
So, I would conclude, as I did the first time, that means that life can't exist without this constellation of planetary stuff.
Exactly. And if anything were to change, I mean, if one of these planets was to blow up, our bodies would adapt. They would have to develop a different form in relation to this. And then on my website, I talk about, for instance, these two planets here, Venus and Mars, have what's called induced magnetospheres. All of the other planets, the Sun has a huge heliosphere, which is a magnetic field, of course. these have induced magnetospheres, meaning they still have magnetospheres, but they're not as powerful as all these other ones. And I'm convinced that if you look at the corresponding organ system in the body, you find out that there's a relationship between, for instance, this is the thymus. And the thymus is very active in development. But by adulthood, it's useless. It doesn't do anything. It's gone. Same thing with the spleen. The spleen can be removed from the body with no, a lot of people are walking around without their spleen. They've been in accidents and they got taken out. But you can't get by without these other ones that have the regular magnetospheres. It's a photosynthetic plant organism. This is just a place where the cellular activity takes place here on the Earth. And we just happen to have a complementary body to this thing. But it's tiny, the scale is immense. Is that what you were getting at?
Well, I don't know. What I was getting at is that what you said is that that this configuration of things is what's required to this combination of planetary stuff and living stuff has to be in this organization to sustain life. Is
Yep.
that right?
Yep.
Which is scary.
Why is that scary?
Because it may not have existed once upon a time. It does exist now, and it may disappear. And for a person who's living, that's scary.
Yeah, but isn't it better to understand that, that's the whole idea behind this. When you recognize that this is a living organism, then you treat it differently, right? That's the deal, right? When you recognize that we are existing within the biorhythms of this solar system, and we should have harmony with that system. We should be cultivating planets. They are our outside half. They're us. It's ridiculous to kill a plant, unless maybe to make a guitar or something, right? But for most reasons, there's not a good reason to kill plants. This is your lungs. They're generating the oxygen. They're generating your food. It's obvious, right? Yep.
It reminds me of, I keep bees, and it reminds me of a hive defined as an organism, and how all the divisions that make the hive live are necessary to make a living. It is a sort of
It's a community, right?
It is
Yep.
yeah. As above, so below.
I think you pointed out that how everything's a reflection in a sense. It's like our bodies are a reflection of the solar organization. It's like we're made of solar material. We're just part of the solar system. That sort of seems like kind of a no-brainer. Where did the stuff come from? It came.
Where else
It's not. Yeah, it had to come out of the solar system. The Earth came out of the solar. Everything came out of the solar system. So, or out of the cosmos, of which the solar system is a part. So it seems, very logical, sensible that everything would be reflected in some way or another, and that's. It just makes sense that we would, the organization of our bodies would be a parallel to, as you pointed out, as it's derived from the solar system. So it would be a direct reflection of that system.
Very fractal. Yeah. Again, the word complementary is useful
Yeah.
because reflection implies that it's at the same scale, but complementary is like quantum physics versus Einsteinian physics. You know, they're at different scales. And these are complementary organisms. They look different. You know, there's all this space, but we're made up of space also, right? I mean, this is what quantum physics is discovering, is that we are mostly space. This is mostly space, except for these, you know, discrete entities making up the chakras. But those chakras lay out the organization of our bodies. And it's just, there's no other way it could work, as far as I can see. Thomas, you...
Well, I love the idea of there being a correlation in quality between different organs and planets. And I'm curious to hear like another example, if you like, let's say Jupiter. What might be a correlation with Jupiter or...
All right. So Jupiter is a gaseous giant. And Jupiter, if it had been a little bit larger, it actually might have been a sun, its own sun. It actually has a satellite system, an extensive satellite system. I don't know how many satellites it's got, but it's got 4 moons that are as large as our moon almost. And it's called a failed solar system. And it is what is it? The solar plexus is one of the chakras. This is the solar plexus here. Now, what is the plexus? I mean, if you look up solar plexus, if you go dissecting in a human body, you're not going to find a solar plexus, right? There is no solar plexus. But I'm convinced that this organ here, the equivalent organ for Jupiter and its satellite system, is the adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland has first of all it has it's got a core, and it's got a cortex and a medulla, the interior medulla. And the interior medulla is made up of nerve tissue. Basically, it's equivalent to brain tissue up here, and it releases epinephrine. And the outer, if you look at the satellite system of Jupiter, the satellites can be pretty obviously divided into 3 different categories based upon their tilt relative to the celestial equator or the planetary equator. So some of them are right in the equator. There's 4 inner planets, and then there's a group of middle planets that are tilted at a different angle. And then the outer planets, they're doing something retrograde or something like this, right? And if you look at the structure of the adrenal cortex, you find that it also has a 3-level organization, and that it releases 3 different types of corticosteroids. And I'm convinced that this organization is responsible for the organization of, you know, that organ in our body. It's like the magnetosphere, the Earth's magnetosphere, right in the middle of that. That's what the lungs, the heart, and the digestive system, that's a huge, you know, that takes up most of our torso, right? And the actual adrenal, you know, the rest of this is in the background of that. They're still, you know, they have an impact. They are involved in, you know, regulating the distribution of blood flow, which is everything. It's like after you eat a meal, the blood is distributed into the digestive system. Otherwise, it goes to different other places, and it's timed, and it's like traffic. You know, it's like we have different things at different times of day, and it's like that in the body. Everything is it's got a particular time and place, because not everything can happen at the same time. You wouldn't want it to, right? So,
May I ask a question?
yep.
Oh, thanks. What kind of action can you take with this knowledge that will change the quality of your life tomorrow?
That's a damn good question.
Yeah, because
Well,
I
could
don't
it be a
know.
year from now?
A year from now?
Might
Well,
not be tomorrow.
that's an easier question, probably, but, you know, I mean, to me, just knowing this should change the way that you approach, you know, buying food, just everything that you're doing. If you're not doing organic, if you're not trying to promote ecological restoration, if you're not trying to stop the rainforest from burning down, if you don't see that these are like huge problems on the planet, then you haven't got the message here. Because that's what's going on here. These trees, these are, you know, metaphorical trees here, but the real trees are just as important, you know. The ocean, you know, it's like most of the photosynthesis actually takes place from plankton, but, you know, at a certain level, if with global warming and everything, it's like, you know, we're at a crisis point, you know. We have to get people to recognize ecological biorhythms and our place with them. That's I don't know, is that?
I think that's a great answer. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
How do we communicate that to all the people at the grocery store that are still taking 5 plastic bags every day to fill their...
You know, I don't know, I mean, I don't think you can grab people and, you know, get us into a useful conversation. That's why I think that this app and also the other one that we're working on, you know, Thomas and I are building the next one, which I'm incredibly excited about. It's an Earth Cloak. And it's, I didn't show you, you know, I gotta get you guys to come back for some reason, right? So, but that app, it's like if you can get people to use this app, then they're looking at the Earth, right? I mean, look at the picture over there. How does that clock compare to a regular 1 through 12 clock with an hour hand? It's not even close, right? I mean, you're looking at the Earth. Every time you look to see what time it is, you see the Earth, and you see yourself in relation to the biorhythms. You see the phases of the moon. I mean, maybe you don't spend a lot of time with it, but you could get into it just like you could go outside. You could follow the progression of the ecliptic if you wanted to, the sun along the ecliptic. But this helps you do that. And it's just a way to remind people that there's a lot more to time and space. And I just think, I don't know how you get people into a conversation. I don't know how to stop a person
I don't
at the
either.
grocery store. But if we could get everyone using this clock, I think that'd be a good step. Because they'd you know, they'd ask about it. They'd want to know what it means, you know. It's like, I think kids would love this thing. Don't you think kids would love this? Right? I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, the phases of the moon. I mean, don't women love the phases of the moon? I know Nancy does. Right? I mean, here it is. You can just see what the phase is. One of the features I want to have is called Salute the Moon. So that whenever the moon is directly overhead, this thing will chime in your pocket. And then you know it's, okay, that's where the moon is, right there. You walk outside, directly south, that's where the moon is at the highest for that day.
Well, that would mean that you would have to design a toy that kids could engage with.
Right. That's a great idea. Yeah, we should, I mean, want to work on that? You know, I mean, yeah, I'd love to do that.
Most kids these days have phones.
Yes, it is their choice.
And much
Yeah.
more adept at using the apps than most of us
Yeah.
dinosaurs.
Well, what age kids are we talking about?
Well, true.
Well, you're targeting it.
A lot of kids are not allowed to have phones because they're dangerous.
True.
Kids really hard on is leave all of us behind, which is what they already been. very, very easily. I mean, if they could make a reality out of some of the games that they're playing, they could certainly make this a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Just knowing that it's like all of our celebrations, our festivals, our Christmas and all these things, these were originally pagan ceremonies. And we've, our government came along and decided to politicize those things. But they used to be celebrations of the four seasons. And we should have the four seasons, the equinoxes and the solstices and the midpoints, Beltane, Samhain, I forget the...
Bridges.
Yeah, exactly. Those should be celebrated all around the globe. And then people would start to appreciate, why are we celebrating? Because these are agricultural cycles. And we are still an agricultural society. Whether we know it or not or acknowledge it, we depend upon agriculture. And the agriculture that we're doing now is destructive. It's part of the problem. Right? We need organic agriculture. We need people working the land again. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Working the land is like the best job you can get. Right? I mean, you think working inside's a good job? Sitting at a desk? That sucks. Working outside, that's a good job. And if we had organic gardens, and that was like our, we're sharing our food and having these celebrations regularly, having community, drawing people together. That's how we can get back to health as a planet, right? That's what we need. Yep.
I really like your app. It's really beautiful and engaging, and I also like the way you started your presentation talking about how 2,000 years ago people had this whole different system of time that they were working with that's based on the position of the sun where they were at on the face of the earth. And the calendar back then, it was not the Gregorian calendar, they had different kind of calendars.
They used the constellations.
Right. So what I'm surprised though about your app is that you superimpose our current system with the Gregorian calendar and the current time system that we're using. Like, how come you didn't make like your own calendar that would be based on the like what they would have had before 2,000 years ago, or your own time based on where a person was on the planet at that moment. And yeah, it would be practical in the sense like you wouldn't look at this to know what time to go for your job, but it would reorient you to the rhythm of the earth, which was what I thought your point was.
Yeah, that's a great point. And
you could do away with the leap year. You're making your own calendar. In your own time. Like it would be noon would be when the sun is directly over you wherever you were on Earth.
right, instead of the hour hand, you'd have like a gnomon, basically.
Yeah.
Well, he's working on that. He's trying several other different calendars.
Yeah, actually, you're leading into next month's talk, which is about the Earth clock, which is, we're developing, I want to have every significant calendar on the globe I want to have. The Muslim calendar, the Chinese calendar, the Jewish calendar, the Indian calendar, and most of these calendars are lunisolar calendars. They're, the Gregorian calendar was only recently adapted by most cultures. For instance, the Chinese agricultural calendar is still in use by, 1 billion Chinese people. They still use that calendar. And it's based upon 12 or 13 lunar months. And the reason you have 12 or 13 is because you add 12 months, 12 lunar months is 354 days approximately. So that's 10 days off of a seasonal year, which is 365.24219 days, right? So in order to, you would have 2 in a row like that, then you're off 20 days, and then the third one you add an intercalary month to bring it back so that the months start up at the seasons, or at the first of the year. And they have 24, they divide the ecliptic into 24 things, and they're labeled with things like, first sign of moisture. The birds are in the air, the spring equinox. They're direct agricultural events that they refer to. So
what if you were going to make the calendar, and what if you were going to make the clock? What would that look like? Not using somebody else's.
Not using somebody else's? I don't know. I like having, a lunisolar calendar. Actually, I like having the months coincide with the years. I mean, a calendar is useful in part because you can use it to communicate with other people and meet at certain times. If you're just using it,
that's overrated.
okay, well, if you're just using it for yourself, like if you're, out there in, then all you want to do is follow the months.
The Earth.
Well, how would you do
Your
it?
relationship with the Earth. I think for one thing, the time, noon would be when the sun is directly above me, and
Yeah.
then you divide a day into a certain number of hours.
Different from 24?
24, you're the expert, I'm just,
So,
and then say the year, how
It
long
could
does it
be any
take
number.
for the sun, the Earth to go around the sun? We'll then divide that into 12 or pick a number, and then.
so can I respond to that real quick? So one of the design approaches for the Earth clock is to create this kind of a foundation based on the Earth and Sun relationship that then any calendar algorithm can be put into it. And out of the box, it's going to come with several, and we're basically building a framework to be able to add in, any of these other calendars or custom calendars. So you could customize. There'll be a little widget. You could customize what shows up there